Ms. Hu Xiaolian, CPPCC member, former Vice Minister of Agriculture Chen Xiaohua, CPPCC member, Vice Chairman of All China Federation of Industry and Commerce, and Dean of the School of Economics and Management of Tsinghua University, Mr. Qian Yingyi, Mr. Ning Gaoning, Secretary of Party Leadership Group and Chairman of Sinochem Group. Today's press conference will last around 1 hour. Before raising questions, please identify your media affiliations to give more opportunities to all the journalists at the conference room. Please limit your questions to only one. Now the floor is open for questions.
With People's Daily, in this year's government work report, the projected target for GDP growth is set at around 6.5%, a bit lower than last year's growth at 6.9%. What are the considerations behind this target? We have noted that a dozen provinces have revised down their forecast for economic growth this year. What's your take?
回答这个问题呢，可以从几个角度看。
To answer your questions, I think there are several perspectives. First of all, just like what happened in the past several years, the economic growth target set in the government work report is a forecast. It's not a planned target. Looking back at last year, or the past several years, we had 6.7% of growth in 2016. In 2017, the forecast for economic growth is 6.5%. So it is a little bit lower than the growth target in 2016. The actual growth rate last year is 6.9%. Surpassing the target set for last year. And this year's forecast is still 6.5%. And it remains the same as the target for last year. From a different perspective, we can see that, more importantly, this year there is something very important and different at the 19th CPC National Congress. We are shifting growth from high-speed growth towards high-quality growth, which is a strategic shifting of economic growth. So, as far as I understand it, setting the economic growth target at 6.5%, which is lower than the actual growth rate last year at 6.9%, aims to transform the paradigm of economic growth. In different localities, you just mentioned that over 10 provinces and cities have revised down their economic growth rate. I would like to construe this action as a preparation by these regions to prepare for the transformation from high-speed growth to high-quality growth. And this change is of significance and a very important signal, because this is by no means something very easy. Promoting the transformation of economic growth from a quantity-based approach to quality-based approach has been talked about for over 20 years. But what happened is that at different localities, the emphasis on quality growth is still insufficient, but this time around we can see that local governments have begun to change their approach to economic growth. But I have to say that even though the growth rate has been set at a lower range, the pressure and challenge of our economic growth is even higher, because better quality growth is not simply about growth numbers. And you cannot gauge economic growth using only one number. So the challenge is even more formidable. Thank you.
谢谢主持人，我是香港经济导报记者。我想提问杨伟民委员。今年的那个政府工作报告呢，强调了坚持稳中求进的工作总基调。请问杨伟民委员，如何确保稳中求进，实现经济运行稳中向好？稳中求进是否意味着经济增长趋缓不可避免？谢谢。
With Hong Kong Economic Herald.The work report of the government stressed the general principle of pursuing progress while ensuring stability. How do you think, Mr. Yang Weimin, can China achieve steady progress, and does it mean moderation in growth is inevitable?
好，谢谢您的提问。这个我记得总书记大概在从2012年开始。
I remember that General Secretary Xi Jinping in 2012, when the Economic Work Conference were held, that we have to emphasize steady growth of economic development. General Secretary Xi emphasized that this is a methodology of achieving economic development. So to ensure steady growth, we have to make it an overarching principle, not just some progress in some areas and growth in other areas. So to ensure steady growth of the economic development, we have to revamp the systems, diffuse financial risks, and also deal with local government debt, as well as promoting the healthy and sound development of real estate markets. So we have to observe the principle of steady growth in all areas of economic development. And the core tenet of this principle is to abide by the laws of the economic growth and keep a moderate pace of economic development. We have to refrain from pursuing blind growth and also prevent from inactions. So you mentioned that whether the moderation of growth is inevitable here in China. As far as I'm concerned, I think the economic development will follow certain rules and laws. In those catch-up countries and economies, in the early stage of the catch-up, the economic growth rate would be quite fast. But when the economic aggregate reaches a certain stage, the improvement of quality will be put high on the agenda. So we have graduated away from the expansionary stage to a moderation stage, which is an inevitable trend of economic development. And we can see this from the experience of other countries in the world, where the moderation tended to follow a quick period of growth. But this is a long-term trend. So from medium to long-term perspective, in certain at certain spots of our time, there might be some ups and downs. So there would not be big swings in the economic growth rate in certain quarters or a certain period of time. And there might be some small ups and downs, and I think there is no reason for us to worry about it too much. So we have to keep calm and pursue the general orientation of pursuing quality growth. And that's what pursuing steady growth actually means.
我是来自第一财经的记者，我的问题是给陈晓华委员的。大家知道，就是产业兴旺是乡村振兴的重点。 那最近我们呢在采访中了解到，就是目前那个农村人口就是持续减少，一些村呢出现了空心化的现象。那么请问陈委员，在这样的村呢，如何才能使这些产业振兴精准落地呢？谢谢。
With China Business Network, boosting non-agricultural sectors holds key to rural revitalization. We were told in recent interviews about a rural population decline and the phenomenon of rural hollowing in some villages. How can we translate the policy of rural revitalization into reality in such villages?
大家知道乡村振兴啊，
As you all know, rural revitalization lies in people and talents. Without people and talents, development wouldn't be possible. Right now, labor force in the rural areas has been continuously declining and some villages are hollowing out. In response to this problem, I think we have to take two perspectives. First, this is an inevitable byproduct of urbanization. As a matter of fact, in a lot of countries, when urbanization reaches 70%, before that, there would be a hollowing out of rural areas. In the past 5 years, the rural population has been 80 million, according to the registration results. And these people have turned into urban dwellers from farmers. And in the future, the rural migration into cities will increase continuously, and this is a matter of fact. After these people moved out of cities, moved out of rural areas, and there will be old people, women, and children left behind in the rural areas.
So we have to attach great importance to this issue. We have to address this issue actively. Otherwise, we may meet some challenges in the revitalization of the rural area and the thriving of the industry. Based on our past experience, we have to focus the people as the priority, and we can take actions from two perspectives. On one hand, we should cultivate the new generation of the farmers. In order to implement this action, we have to keep these farmers, these talents inside of the rural areas, especially for the leaders of the rural areas. With the leadership of this group of people, we can help the thriving of the rural area. We have taken a lot of measures in training of the talents in the rural areas, which help to solve the problem. On the other hand, we also need to make efforts to attract talents back to the rural area. For the citizens who went out from the rural areas, we want to keep them in the rural area. We want these talents to go back to the rural areas to start their business and make innovations. Throughout these years, we have already attracted around 7 million people back to the rural areas and start their own business. Their efforts has brought vitality of the rural area. We should encourage this kind of trend. This is one aspect. Another perspective is that we should optimize the structure and the layout of the rural area. With the change of the structure of the population of the rural area, which may need to some changes. We have to consider the optimization of the structure of the rural area based on the actual situation. For some of the villages in the rural areas, we can provide more public services and enhance the build-out of the infrastructure and prepare a better environment. And for villages who have a very glorious history and traditions, we should better preserve those villages. For other underdeveloped villages, we may also want to lift them out of the villages. Through all these efforts, we want to keep the talents inside of the rural areas and take concerted actions for the thriving of the industry. Thank you.
How serious is China about reining in debt in the broader economy, given that such work comes with a lot of risks, including to economic growth? What kind of metrics does China measure its progress in this or lack of progress?
华尔街日报，我的问题是关于债务的。我想问一问，中国政府对债务对经济增长的风险是怎么评估的？这方面有什么样的评价体系，或者说希望建立怎么样的评价体系？谢谢。我的问题是问给杨委员的。
How to evaluate the debt risks? For this question, I think it's not difficult to answer. If we are lending money from other people, it is called debt. In general, we will consider several aspects. For example, the debt from the government, and debt from the local government, and debt from the enterprises. For financial institutions, for example, Ms. Hu's enterprise, they also have some debt. But I think we have to pay close attention to the debt from the government and institutions. We do see a trend that we have an increasing growth for the debt in China. For the government debt, the central debt is quite stabilized. And for the debt of the local government, we also see a very stable trend. Within the debt of local government, we have to pay attention to the invisible debt of the local government. With the implementation of the new policies in the past few years, we do see some illegal actions taken by the local government to use the debt financing. And the central government will issue a series of policies to better regulate the financial risks and to control the underwriting debt that was raised by the local government. And also, we see a rapid growth rate for this amount of debt from the local government. as a result, we have to better control what we call the property bubble to keep the debt from the public within a reasonable range. And we have to set out a new housing mechanism to control the property bubble. As for the enterprise debt, this is of a key concern from us, especially for the debt from the state-owned enterprises. And we also see an increase of the debt for these state-owned enterprises. And we also have a member from the state-owned company participating in today's press conference. So I just speaking from a general term that we do see this increasing trend of the debt from the state-owned enterprises. And from last year's key conferences, and one of the priorities set was to control the debt from the state-owned enterprises. I believe that the State Asset Commission is formulating a series of regulations to better control the debt from the state-owned enterprises as well as the central government. But the trend keeps increasing, and we do see the debt has a close correlation with the growth of the GDP. As long as we stabilize the GDP growth within 6 to 7%, and with a lower growth rate of the debt, that would be much healthier for the economic development. Thank you for your question.
我的问题是提给宁高宁委员。我们知道，政府工作报告中来一场中国制造的品质革命，让人感到印象深刻。那么您在实体经济领域，想必也有很深的感触。那么请问您，您怎么理解品质革命、实体经济转型升级？您有哪些建议？谢谢。
With Xinhua News Agency, we are deeply impressed by the call for a revolution in the quality of Chinese-made goods in the government work report. Mr. Ning Gaoning, you're a CPPCC National Committee member representing the real economy. What's your interpretation of such a revolution, and what's your recommendation on upgrading the real economy? Thank you.
谢谢你。那个从中国的企业界啊
，Thank you for your question.
从这个政府工作报告里边讲到这个品质革命，就是革命。
From the enterprise's perspective, and in consideration of the revolution of Made in China, which was put forth in the government report, I think it is at the right time, and also points out the importance of manufacturing industry of China. China is a leader of the industry of manufacturing and achieve tremendous achievements. But we do see some other problems. For example, the toilet cupboard we have experienced in the past. From my personal experience, a dozen of years ago, China is producing turbines, and we are importing this equipment from other countries. And gradually, we have better developed our technology to make this equipment. But still, we are imported other kind of equipment from other countries. And for other chemical equipments, sometimes we still need importation. It is a process. Now we have a larger scale for the manufacturing companies in China with lower cost. But in terms of the skills and expertise in these companies, we have to further improve the capability. That is the concerns that are facing the Chinese companies. I also felt that in the past few years, we have been talking about a lot about the resources, for example, the land, the oil field, and these companies are in need of the policy support. More and more emphasis has been put into the high quality. If there's no innovation, then there will be no better technologies. I think it is a good start set by China. For China's manufacturing industry, we have embarked on a new journey of upgrading our company, our technologies, and seek for better quality. I would like to mention a set of points. The first one, we should continue to support the supply side reform. The supply side I talk about is about the technology. It's not about purchasing the new technology. In the past, we may purchase resources and we try to develop our own company. But now, for Chinese companies, they require more high-tech knowledge. In terms of the resources, if China do not have enough natural resources and the environment resources, the company cannot grow bigger. And of course, we also need support, policy support from the government.
I believe that the manufacturing upgrading in China will be the same as the application of internet technologies. Within a few years, there will be a quantum leap. And a lot of investments are being concentrated in innovation areas. For instance, take my company, Sinochem, and we are upgrading our oil grades into China 5 or China 6, which is much, much higher than the average grade. And these products can be sold both within China and also in overseas markets. So you cannot just wait for the change of the policies in order to change and upgrade your products. And some of our equipment is also reducing emissions, and the production of lithium batteries is using new materials, and the film used in aerospace and the pesticides used in agricultural sector are all being upgraded. And this upgrade represents a very small part of the overall upgrading of technologies in China. And for the transformation and upgrading of Chinese industries, and I'm fully confident, and the Chinese-made products will certainly follow the trend. Thank you.
我是中国网的记者，我想请问胡小亮委员一个问题。中央经济工作会议强调要打好防范和化解重大风险的这个攻坚战，重点呢是防控金融风险。我们知道前段时间，为了保护保险消费者的合法权益，中国保监会接管了安邦集团。我们想请问的是，您怎么看金融监管的这个尺度的监管的这个尺度的把握？ 第二呢，就是您对这个全面从严监管金融业有什么建议？谢谢。
With China.com.cn, my question is for Madame Hu Xiaolian. The Central Economic Work Conference stresses the importance of winning the critical battle for stalling and diffusing major risks, financial risks in particular. Not long ago, to protect the lawful rights and interests of insurance consumers, China Insurance Regulatory Commission took over the Anbang Insurance Group. So what's your suggestion on how to strengthen financial regulation?
Well, this question is very much on the minds of every one of us. Regarding financial risks, the central government sets great store by this question. From 2015 to 2017, we had been studying the financial risks a lot, and General Secretary Xi Jinping has also proposed a lot of requirements for diffusing and preventing financial risks. The State Council also made relevant arrangements. In preventing and controlling financial risks, there might be different types of financial risks. For instance, there might be some large financial institutions who will encounter some misconduct or irregularities in their operations, resulting in potential financial risks. And these potential financial risks need to be diffused as soon as possible. For those financial holding groups with high financial risks, they share some common denominators. For instance, the leveraging rate of these financial institutions are very high, and they borrow a lot from external sources without any constraint. And at the same time, in the corporate governance process, the system is not very sound. From shareholders to the management, a lot of problems exist. At the same time, I have taken note of the fact that there might be some heterogenization, or they are packaging the products into different products. For instance, financial products being packaged as real economy products, and they involve huge amounts of money, and once risks happen, and they will have huge repercussions across the market. Therefore, the regulators have issued a raft of regulatory rules and powerful measures to diffuse risks. It's like diffuse the bomb. We are making sure that these black swans and the gray rhinos will not turn into something real and materialize into something uncontrollable. So we support stringent regulation, because only through stringent regulation we can level the playing field and make sure that the market is well organized. For financial professionals, you just mentioned that what kind of suggestions do we have? So as a CPPCC member, let me share with you some of my thoughts. So first of all, for regulators, I think the priority should be given to strengthening the corporate governance of these financial institutions. Whatever we do or say, preventing financial risks lies with the responsibility of financial institutions in conducting sound corporate governance and strengthening their corporate culture, and also the control and management of the company itself. Secondly, financial institutions need to fill in the gaps and void and eliminate the gray areas and make sure that those who are not observing and complying with relevant rules will be punished and brought into daylight. Thirdly, different financial institutions and agencies need to coordinate their efforts. We need to follow uniform regulatory standards to prevent arbitrage. For those compliant financial institutions, by doing so, we can make sure that they will not be taken advantage of in this process. Moreover, we hope that when issuing relevant regulations, the regulators need to strengthen communication with the market so that the financial institutions can get prepared regarding the actions of the financial institutions. We have to make sure that the policies will not produce a negative impact on the market. We also have to strengthen the efficiency of the regulation and make the regulation more targeted. We shouldn't substitute approval for regulation. So everything we do serves the purpose of real economy and is to create more space for the real economy. Thank you very much.
第5排，对。
谢谢主持人，我是中央电视台央视网、央视新闻移动网的记者。我的问题想问给钱颖一委员。钱委员您好。我们都知道今年是改革开放40年，我们一方面说40年来我们取得了非常大的成就，但是另一方面我们又说改革现在进入到了深水区。您是一位经济学家，同时您也是全国工商联的副主席，所以我想请问您的是，您怎么看待这40年来取得的成绩？未来有哪些困难，还有哪些要啃的硬骨头？我们究竟要怎么做才能将改革开放进行到底？谢谢。
With CCTV, my question is for Mr. Chen Yingyi. This year marks the 40th anniversary of reform and opening up. A lot has been achieved over the past 4 decades. That said, reform has also met some challenges. So, Mr. Chen Yingyi, you're an economist and vice chairman of All China Federation of Industry and Commerce. How do you see the accomplishments over the past 4 decades? And what are the difficulties and hard nuts to crack? What does it take to follow through on reform and opening up?
改革开放40年来，我国经济社会发展。
Over the past 4 decades of reform and opening up, the economic and social development has witnessed remarkable achievements, and these are well acknowledged and recognized across the world. In a country as big as China with 1.4 billion people, we have witnessed over 4 decades of fast economic growth, and this is absolutely unprecedented in humanity's history. And the economic growth rate is only one phenomenon, but behind the phenomenon, we can see that millions of people have been lifted poverty, and over 100 million people have been seeing increased income and improvement in their livelihoods. At the international stage, over the past 4 decades, China's GDP as a share of US GDP has increased from 6% to over 60%. As a share of the global economy, China's GDP has also reached 15%. China's contribution to the global economy has exceeded 30%. While we are being very proud of the achievements, we have to remain very composed and calm and be aware of the challenges. We are the largest population in the world, accounting for 19% of the global population, and our economy accounts for 15% of the global economy. The per capita GDP of China is still below the world average. So we are a middle income country, and the economy is still a developing economy. While taking stock of the remarkable achievements, we also have a consensus. What are the reasons behind the achievements? It is fair to say the reason lies in reform and opening up. To continue our growth, we have to follow through the reform and opening up policies. Therefore, the reform and opening up is still ongoing, and as you said just now, we are entering a deep water zone, the most difficult period. So how to see through reform and opening up? I think it is important to remain committed to our purpose, to remember why we have started on this journey in the first place. Opening up is not only about trade and investment, but also about talents, technology, and opening up in all other areas. In the government work report this year, Premier Li Keqiang proposed or mentioned 4 areas of technology that China leads the world: high-speed rail, mobile economy, sharing economy, and AI. And these all involves opening up, in which market should play a decisive role. And this is the experience we have garnered over the past 4 decades. The market plays a far more important role in allocating resources than we have thought. And this is absolutely astonishing. Thirdly, we need the correct incentives, which are critical in unlocking the potential of growth and the creativity of the people.
For the reform and opening up, it reminds me of the statements from the Premier Li Keqiang in his government work report. We need to further deepen the reform and the opening up, and also liberate our concepts. Speak of the hard nuts to crack. We can think back to the 3rd plenary session of the 18th Party Congress and review the list that's put forth in that Congress. Then we realize a lot of hard work to do in the future. In terms of the market opening up, we need to maintain a competitive market system, and more reforms need to be taken into consideration. We need to build a unified instead of a fragmented market. For the labor market, we cannot call it an integrated labor market, because we are separating the development of the rural area and the urban area because of the household registration policy. And also, we are not having a unified social security policy. That's why we think the market of the rural and the urban area is not well developed. In order to build a competitive market, we require strict regulation and also innovation to drive the development of the market. We need a sound competition policy for the market, and they are very crucial for the development to foster a competitive market. The next point is about the incentive. I work in the Federation of the All China Commerce and Industry. We place high priorities in putting incentive to the private sectors. Last year, we do see some improve in the investment of the private sector. but still, this growth rate is still lower than the overall investment in China. And the central government issued like 2 policies to help crack the nuts. We issued the property rights, protection rights, and the incentive policy rights in last year. All of these efforts are help to optimize the market. That's why I say we are still on the way of the reform, and we have full confidence to further implement it, reform and opening up. And we have the confidence to do the reform well.
谢谢主持人，我是财新周刊财新网记者，我想提问给杨伟民委员。杨委员您好，19大报告提出，中国经济发展已经从高速发展阶段转向为高质量发展阶段。在今年的总理政府工作报告中提出的主要预期目标，其中 GDP 预期目标在6.5%左右。我想请问杨委员，在经济高质量发展阶段，中央需要建立哪些政策体系、指标体系和考核办法，来引导各级政府摘掉过去片面强调 GDP 的紧箍咒，从而实现经济高质量发展？谢谢。
With Caijing Media, my question is for Mr. Yang Weimin. The report to the 19th Party Congress stated that China's economy is transitioning from a phase of rapid growth to a stage of high-quality development. And among the projected targets for this year set out in the government work report, GDP growth is around 6.5%. So what kind of policies, index, and evaluation methods are needed for the central leadership to guide local governments away from being obsessed with GDP to seeking high-quality growth?
好，谢谢。
Thank you for your question. In last year's Central Economic Working Conference, President Xi Jinping has put forth the 6 initiatives and the 1 institutional requirement, which what we call the 6+1 system. First of all, we have to form a deep understanding of what we call a high-quality development. And also you mentioned the evaluation method. We need to understand what areas we need to evaluate for the economic growth. We have to take these questions from a different perspective. For me, I think 2 areas are of great importance. The first one, it is a high efficiency of the investment. When I say efficiency, meaning that the capital efficiency, resource efficiency, energy efficiency, and the environment efficiency. And also we need to improve the efficiency of the carbon dioxide. Now we are making good use of the big data to analyze our economy, and we also need to better analyze the data to serve our growth. And the second point I want to mention is a solid performance. We need a good return on investment rate. If we see no returns, there will be no one make investments. Currently, we see a lower investment rates in the private sector. That's because there's a lower return from those investments. We need a return going back to the private sector, and the central government receive more like returns in profits. And for the investment, we also need to consider the social returns. That's what I call the high quality and the high performance economic growth. For the 6+1 initiative, I think it is a long-term undertaking, and relevant parties and the government entities are formulating a concrete plan. At a micro level, for different industries and the companies, we should encourage them to develop products that can be comparable to the highest level of the international society. We should target our weakness. If we are not an expert in the technology, we should develop more technology. If we are short of talents, we should find out a way to cultivate more talents. And for equipment, if we cannot purchase from other countries, we should do concrete research to see how can we make those equipments. Our goal is to achieve the best results at the international standard. At present, the majority of our products rank #1 in the world in terms of quantity, but in terms of the quality, the rankings may not be the same. That's what we called to develop a high-quality economic growth. From the government perspective, I think policy is the key. Now we do not have this kind of policies, but we will make some changes in the future. Some of the departments are working on these policies right now. For some of the public companies, we have a few innovative companies. Most of those public companies are in the traditional industry. And we should pair the specialty of those public companies with innovation. And we want to encourage some of the innovative companies to become listed in the public and provide more choices. And also want to talk something about banking. For lending loans, the bank will look at the mortgages. But for the innovative companies, they do not have a lot of mortgages, and their core competitiveness is the talent and their wisdom. And for these companies, they cannot take loans by exchanging their wisdom. So we need to adjust our policies to accommodate this kind of situation. We should not just focus on those tangible assets, but also need to understand the invisible, intangible value. And for the venture capital, we cannot use the state-owned assets for the venture investment. That's why we encourage a broad range of reforms and the adjustments for the policies. And we are just started the journey of reform and opening up, and we have a long way to go. Before we realize the modernized society by 2035, in the economic development, this kind of trajectory should be in pursuit of the good quality development. And we will make a series of changes in the policy and indicators and the evaluation methodologies. And the overall goal is to grow our economy in a healthier and sustainable way. Thank you.
谢谢主持人，我是中国农村杂志社记者。我们的刊物长期关注和报道三农，所以我今天的问题想特别邀请三农领域的专家陈晓华委员来回答。我们在采访中发现，现在的农村还存在着大量的小农户。小农户的生产经营其实面临着很多难题，他们的规模比较小，效益不高，经营比较分散，面临的风险很大。那么您认为，在实施乡村振兴战略中，怎么能更好地帮助这些小农户破解他们面临的这些难题？怎么样能让小农户更好地与现代农业相衔接？谢谢。
With China Rural News magazine, our magazine has been focused on rural areas, agriculture and farmers. That's why my question is about the small agricultural households. We have noticed that there is a large number of such households in rural areas. They are operating on small scales and facing difficulties and a lot of risks. So how do you think, Mr. Chen Xiaohua, as an expert on agriculture and farmers' development, can we help small agricultural households to resolve their difficulties and benefit from agricultural modernization as we implement the rural revitalization strategy? Thank you.
Currently, in the rural areas, there are two types of households doing business in agriculture. One type is the family-owned households who are doing business. And there are around 3 million people working in this area. It is the origin of the agricultural development. And the other part to sustain the agricultural development is the small agricultural household. And they only have the contract of 7 to 8 years of contracts. And we have around 200 million small agricultural households in China. But they are the fundamental force to develop the agriculture in China.
The existence of smallholder farmers is the result of the extensive agriculture in China. Well, in the years to come, and this is here to stay, if urbanization in China reaches 70% or above, in rural areas, there will still be 300 to 400 million people living in rural areas in China. And this is the reality that China's agricultural modernization drive has to face. So how to make sure that millions of these smallholder farmers can benefit and participate in the agricultural modernization process. This is an important question for us to address. And this is one of the most important projects for us to solve in agricultural modernization. General Secretary Xi Jinping also emphasized this issue, and the central government has issued important documents in promoting the participation of smallholder farmers in the agricultural modernization process. I think what is important is how to bring these smallholder farmers into the track of agricultural modernization. That's two things we can do to achieve this goal. First, we have to improve the organization of farmers and develop diversified forms of cooperation between different farmers. Mutual assistance and unity of farmers can also help address the problems and challenges that one household cannot deal with. This kind of partnership and cooperation can take diverse forms, and it can happen at a certain link of agricultural production, or it can take the form of labor cooperation, or the cooperation of technology and capital. And I think farmers can choose among these different forms of cooperation. Secondly, we have to unleash the role of new type of players in the agricultural sector to guide the economic development in the rural areas. This new type of agricultural players can not only provide post-production services and relevant market-based services, they can also develop contract or order-based agriculture to ensure the basic income of farmers. For instance, extensive and large-scale plantations and growing of relevant crops. At the same time, they may undertake joint stock undertakings and dividends arrangements to smooth out the interests mechanism between different parties. By doing so, the farmers can share in the benefits of the agricultural growth. We often say that when the boss visits the countryside, they have to bring benefits to the rural areas. So the rural support policies need to galvanize the rural players and give them more support to achieve better growth. Thank you.
新闻社和中国新闻网的记者想请问宁高宁委员，目前呢，备受关注的国有企业改革已经进入了深水区和攻坚期。那么，如果要进一步的推进改革，然后培育具有全球竞争力的一流企业，您认为我们应该亟待解决哪些问题？此外，中国企业应当如何借助“一带一路”建设进行全球化布局，向价值链的高端攀升？谢谢。
With China News Service, my question is for Mr. Ning Gaoning. The much-followed state-owned enterprises reform has entered a critical stage. A lot needs to be done to deepen reform, to develop globally competitive enterprises. What are the challenges ahead? And how can Chinese companies shape their global development plans and move up the global value chain when participating in the Belt and Road Initiative?
Thank you for your question. Well, we say that the reform has encountered the most difficult period of time, and this has been talked about for a period of time. SOE reforms has been going on for many years, and some achievements have been made in this process. This time around, Premier Li Keqiang mentioned in the government work report that the profits of SOEs increased by 23% in 2017. So the SOEs are operating in a sound shape. So it is fair to say that SOEs represent a very important part of China's economy. It employs 50 million people, and it is one of the largest sectors in terms of job creation. It provides 370 billion in taxation, accounting for 1/4 of the total taxation we have collected. The profits amounted to 2 trillion and 150 trillion of state-owned assets. In the past 10 years, SOEs have maintained its value and even increased its value. So this is the reality. However, this is by no means satisfying. We need reform. Why do we need reform? Because in terms of net equity returns, return on net equity, compared with the peers in the private sector, the ROE is relatively low. And this is because of different reasons from history. At the same time, the sectors the SOEs are operating in are the traditional sectors, and the innovation capacity of these SOEs and the ability to lead the industry are relatively weak. So this is the reality. So based on this circumstance, how do we foster globally competitive enterprises? There are some rules for us to follow, and there are also problems for us to address. So we have to deal with the most difficult part, because the easy part has already been dealt with in the past. And reform has produced its own results, and going forward, we are encountering the most difficult part. I think there are some important measures that need more wisdom and policy arrangements and more courage for us to see through the reform. First, shareholding structure reform. Usually we deregulate the SOEs and give them incentives, and we also revise the corporate structure. I think we need to take one step further, that is shareholding structure or ownership structure reform. And this has been experimented in some central SOEs, and in smaller companies we also can do the piloting, and there will be important results to be achieved in this process. So this is one step further based on the previous achievements. We also have to deal with the relationship of the party leadership and the management of the company, how to deal with the relationship of the shareholders and the management approach, etc. So this is a whole new area of reform, which involves ownership structure reform. We also have to adjust the strategic orientation, because ownership structure reform is not enough. We have to make sure that the strategy is tailored to the new market. For those old and existing SOEs and sectors, how do we make sure that they can conduct innovation? How do we make sure that these enterprises can shift from quantity to quality-oriented growth? And these are all very important questions for us to address. Internal management systems, efficiency, and performance evaluation, etc. These are all important areas of reform, which will make sure that we can foster globally competitive and world-class enterprises. In addition, we also have to focus on talents and people. In SOEs, they have been following those die-hard habits and behaviors, so we have to improve their habits and behaviors. So these all bear on the task of fostering globally competitive enterprises. I'm fully confident because we have huge creativity. We Chinese people have huge creativity. Many things which are thought to be impossible have been pulled off by the Chinese people. I think this is absolutely amazing. For instance, a Chinese company has taken a stake in Mercedes-Benz, which is a German company. People thought that it was a joke, unimaginable, but this actually happened. When Geely bought Volvo, it was thought unimaginable as well. And there are also language barriers, but the Chinese people have pulled off this task, and there is huge creativity in Chinese people. And when ZTE bought McDonald's in the past 3 months, I met the boss of the company. It was absolutely amazing. Within 3 months, the sales, the same store growth has registered 10% growth. And delivery and e-commerce have worked its magic in this process. And it has expanded the sales significantly. And magic really happens when Chinese people work hard. Thank you.
谢谢主持人，我是中国国际广播电台的记者，我想向胡小练委员提问。首先要祝胡小练委员节日快乐。我的问题呢，就是说，就今年总理政府报告中提出呢，要扩大国际产能合作，优化对外投资结构。然后请胡小练委员呢，就为我们介绍一下，就是在对外投资和国际产能合作方面呢，我们去年取得的成绩单是否足够亮眼？今年我们将重点开展哪些工作？然后是推动形成全面开放新格局。谢谢。
With China Radio International, my question is for Madame Hu Xiaolian. My festive greetings to you. The government work report underlined the necessity to expand industrial capacity cooperation with other countries and improve the composition of outbound investment. So could you elaborate on the highlights of China's last year's score report in outbound investment and international industrial cooperation? To make fresh progress in all-round opening up, what are the priorities this year?
Thank you for your greetings. As a female CPPCC member, to be part of the CPPCC member to provide suggestions to China's politics is a huge honor. The question you raised concerns international cooperation and opening up to the rest of the world and international industrial capacity cooperation. On all these fronts, remarkable achievements have been made.
I can explain you the achievements in several aspects. First of all, last year, the outbound investment experienced a high growth rate. It is over $125 billion US. This is the quantity, but we have made solid progress in the outbound investment in terms of the quality. In the past, we made massive investments in entertainment, and for 2017, most of the investments are made in the area of the technological development and industrial development, as well as expanding the green development. This investment has achieved good progress in those overseas countries and also bring benefits to the investors. And the second point I want to highlight is about the outbound engineering project. We also experienced an 8% increase in the outbound engineering project last year. China is very strong in the outbound engineering project. Last year, we also experienced an upgrade. In the past, we just sent migrant workers outside of China as the labor resources, because we are very good at the engineering work. However, with the strategy of industrial upgrade, Chinese companies, when they are taking on the engineering work, they also put investment in the engineering project. After the completion of the engineering project, they will also be involved in the operation of the business. So we are integrating the efforts in investment as well as the operation of the engineering project so as to improve the efficiency of the investment. The third point I want to mention, it is about the build out of the economic and trade zone overseas. Now we have almost 100 economic and trade zones built out in other countries. This will help to improve the industrialization in the overseas regions and boost the employment locally. These three achievements we have made last year has shown that we make substantive progress in the industry capacity cooperation and the outbound investment. This year marks the 40th anniversary of the reform and opening up of China. We need to further our strength in opening up and the reform, and continue to forge cooperation for overseas economy and trade. From my perspective, we have to make efforts in the following aspects. The first one, we need to make full advantage of the Belt and Road Development Platform. This project is of great benefit in boosting the economic and trade cooperation. For the economic development of the countries around the route, we need to incorporate and integrate their efforts with Chinese economic development and make the economic pie bigger. So through strengthening the cooperation can help to drive the economic growth of China. And the second, we need to bring more freedom and convenience of the trade cooperation. In addition to expansion of the exports, we also need to put efforts to drive importation. And this year, China will hold the importation conference in China and place equal emphasis on import and export. And we also need to boost the tertiary type of trade and open up a new chapter for the trade development in 2018 and drive China into a leader of the area of trade. And the third point I want to make is that we need to continue the outbound investment. For the attraction of investment, we will continue to strengthen our efforts to attract more foreign investment and to open up the tertiary sector, financial sector to those foreign investment. And we should center around our efforts, our investment to develop the real economy. Through these areas, the efforts in these areas, I think we want to create a network which connects trade, investment, and service, and integrate Chinese economy into world economy, and open up Chinese market to the world. By doing this, not only Chinese economy will receive benefits in the economic development, this can also drive the growth for the world economy and play a positive role. As a financial institution, we will continue our efforts to build the economic path for the overall development. For example, to accelerate the international use of RMB and implement some financial services to the world. And we also want to play an innovative role in building financial services. And we also want to play our role in developing the equity and unite all the efforts and make contributions to the development for the real economy. Due to the interest of time, now we would like to take the last question. Maybe today is the International Women's Day, and I suggest we give this opportunity to a male journalist.
Hi, from AFP. Recently, there have been a couple of large Chinese private companies that have been taken over by the central government or the local government. For example, Ambang Insurance or Zhongxin Nengyuan. And I was wondering why that's happened and if there will be more examples of that in the future.
法新社记者，最近我们注意到，像安邦、中信能源等大型的私营企业被中央或者地方政府接管，为什么会发生这样的事情？以后还会不会有类似的事件发生？谢谢。给杨委员，这个问题提给杨委员。
这个。 我对这个金融问题呢，并不是这个特别的了解。委员来提。
I'm not that familiar with this kind of financial issues. I will ask Ms. Hu to answer your question, and she represents my thoughts. Okay, first I can share my comments, and later Mr. Yang will give further comments. Actually, when I answer my first question, I already touched upon some of the issues you have been mentioned. You are asking why we have this situation. There are several reasons. I've said that for those private companies, they have a high ratio of debt to asset. And the second point I want to make is that for the regulation, they have insufficient regulation, and they also not very well in the governance. For these companies, they are running their business with debt, and their results in the balance sheet is very vulnerable. When there is a change in the policy, and for these companies, they will bear a higher risk in terms of financial risk. So for these companies, they are risky companies. Some of them are large companies and have a very comprehensive license and certificates to run their business. They are institutions with financial, some of the financial holding certificates. If they are under risk, they may bring negative impact to the market. For this kind of institutions, we need to pay close attention to the operation of them. Whether the risk will be spread out to the society and hurt the stability of Chinese markets, I think in China this will not happen. This is because China's Central Committee and government place high emphasis in the risk control. We hold out our risk management standards. We will forestall and identify these risks in early stages and solve those risks in time. So we have this consciousness to prevent the risk. And the second point I want to make is that during the process of handling the risk for the regulation companies, they will use a step-by-step solution to solve this problem. For these companies which have a high leveraging rate, they will urge them to lower the leveraging rate. For some of the companies who are conducting illegal behaviors, and they will be held fully accountable. In some extreme cases, some of the authorities will take over these private companies. And we have a comprehensive mechanism to categorize this risk and prevent this risk will spread out to the society and create negative impact. And the third point I make is to fill the gap and strengthen the weakness. After we see there was some illegal practice from these private companies and some gray areas, we will come up with a series of policies and try to prevent the risk from happening.
And this will make sure that a couple of institutions will not spread the contagion and turn into systemic risks of the entire financial market. Having said that, the most fundamental measure is that we have set up the correct systems to forestall the risks. Market players and regulators can work in unison to take relevant, timely, and forceful measures to prevent risks. And this is the biggest advantage of our policies. And the economic fundamentals are in good shape, and economic foundation is very strong. And these has laid a solid groundwork for preventing financial risks. Well, Madam Hu has been very comprehensive and detailed in answering your question. Preventing and controlling financial risks is one of the three critical battles in the coming years. The key of the three battles is preventing and controlling financial risks. It involves financial holding groups, and which are one of the areas we have identified as a source of risk. The reasons have been elaborated by Madam Hu just now. Last year, the State Council has put together a Financial Stability Commission, whose purpose is to regulate the existing loopholes of the policies. These financial institutions used to cover a whole range of different businesses, and they will leverage the loopholes in the policies. And the party and the Central Committee and the State Council have put together some policies to shore up the weak links and fill the gap in policy arrangements to effectively diffuse risks and prevent these small butterfly effects turning into some systemic risks. This brings us to the end of this press conference. Thank you, the CPPCC members and friends from the press.